Hello there, friends. I hope that y'all are having a great start to your day. We are coming to you this afternoon to chat about some money saving tips for your electric bill this summer. I don't know about y'all, but I have been pretty startled that we have already seen triple digits this summer, and it's not even um, like really the hot of summer yet. So we are going to be chatting with an expert today that has some good tips on getting the best deal for your electric bill. And we're just kind of waiting now. We have to have our friend join us. And give me just a second. We are on. Sorry for the delay. We are working on adding that in. We're gonna give a big Fort Worth Moms vlog. Hello, we did it.
We did it.
Yay! Sorry, we had a little bit of technical trouble there for a second, but we are really super excited today to have our friend Mr. Bradshaw with us. Hello, Mr. Bradshaw. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just Jessen.
Okay, fine. I'm a good Southern girl, so I have to use the proper names, okay?
I know. Me
Okay,
too. Been here.
yes.
Yeah.
So can you tell us where are you coming live from?
We're in Houston. So we're
Hey,
a little bit just marginally cooler than you are in the Metroplex.
yeah, we have had an interesting kind of kickoff here. The end of May and the beginning of June have not been our friends. We've had really hot temps. So I'm kind of excited, and this is a very timely Facebook Live chat we get to have because not only are moms here not really excited about being hot for a lot of months, we're really not excited about what our energy bills may be like. So I've heard that you are the expert on that, and you are going to give us some tips.
Well, I'll do my very best.
Okay. Our friend is with Energy Ogre, and like I said, we're going to get some tips from him, and I've got a little cheat sheet with some questions, so I make sure
Okay.
that we ask everything and we can get like a really thorough idea about the services that y'all offer. So I'm going to jump in with some questions, and you can totally feel free to interrupt me at any time if
No,
I'm missing something. Okay,
no
so
problem.
first of all, just tell me a little bit about Energy Ogre and what y'all do, and what you kind of have to offer, just like a good overview for the people who've never heard of it.
Sure. Well, we started this business going on almost 5 years ago now. Just because we saw, backing up for a second, I've been in the energy space for like a very, very long time. So over 20 years. And in around 2013, I had some close friends of mine that said, "Hey, I know that you're in the business. What should we be doing? What kind of contract? Who's a good provider? What's a good rate to sort of get on?" And I sort of had provided them the same information that I've been providing for folks for years. Was, hey, just go to Power to Choose.
Yeah.
Find something that's good and sign yourself up. Some of the more competitive rate programs are sort of out there. And I had some of them come back to me later and said, I'm a little confused about what I'm seeing here. Can you help me sort of wade through some of the mess? So I hadn't looked at Power to Choose in a number of years, and I actually waded into it and got to looking at it, and it was even in the different sort of competitive markets. I started to see that a lot of these rate structures and the way that people were advertising plans and different types of things was a little it had changed quite a bit, and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. It was something that things were set up in such a way that you weren't always getting sort of what you thought you were going to
Right.
get.
Yeah. It is confusing.
It is, and
Mm.
so I sat down with some friends that had been in this space as well, and I said, technology's advanced so much
Mm-hmm.
since we were looking at this stuff in the early 2000s. Is there a way for us to basically perform some math exercises where we can get all these rate programs and get them all apples to apples, so that we can look at them not with all the gimmicky parts in there, factor in all the gimmicky stuff. And, some gimmicks work well for certain people if they
Right.
consume electricity a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we found a way to sort of take all those rate programs and get them on an apples to apples basis. And the next sort of big thing that happened in the industry was we moved away from some of the old demand meters into smart meters. And that was sort of a big change.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we have the ability to start to look at how folks use electricity specifically in their house.
Right.
So we had all these supply curves, and you have a unique demand curve. And so it's sort of a math exercise to say, let's look through all the different rate programs to find one that fits mathematically best for the way you use electricity in your house. So that's sort of how we started, and that's what we do today. I think we always sort of talk about this. I don't know if this is a right way to say it or not, but people get confused as to the process and how do you sign up, and if I move from one to the other, is my power going to go out, or what if I have a tornado that comes through here, and where are this provider's line trucks versus the
Mm-hmm.
other folks' stuff. So we just try to make it simple. So the goal here is for us to just sort of take over and handle the enrollments, make sure people don't fall out of contract, which is a big problem when folks aren't paying attention. So it's sort of like a technology company that's wrapped in customer service candy coating. So
Okay. Yeah. No, that's really great. I know, um, I mean, I've been in Texas now for 12 years, but I moved here from a state where you did not have options for your
right,
electric provider. And so it
right,
was very overwhelming for me to try to then ascertain what was going to be. I mean, because not only, it doesn't always mean that you're looking for the cheapest, least expensive
right,
option. You also need certain services. And for us, like clean energy was a big deal. And so just kind of having to research who offers what and at what times of day is it offered and coupled with cost. So y'all are just kind of
right.
like a one-stop shop then that is going to take out a lot of that exhaustive research for
Yeah,
your clients.
yeah. In the end, the competitive markets are a really good thing, and they provide a great opportunity
Yeah.
for people to save money from where the way it used to be. But it requires, like everything else, you just got to be able to navigate through a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
things, and it's a challenge for some people. And
Sure.
so we're just trying to make it easy. Everybody, especially moms, time is a premium.
Right.
It's
Amen.
and so we're just trying to help put that time back in your life, so you
Right.
don't have to sort of waste 10, 15 hours researching
Mm-hmm.
stuff or
No.
be stressed out about whether you're in something competitive or not.
Right.
So.
Perfect. Okay, so how, like we know that you're kind of like a one-stop shop, but then how does the whole notion of cost savings come from Energy Ogre?
Right. So I don't know why this is the case, but the electricity industry sort of follows a similar model to what we see in like cell phones and sometimes what we see in cable television providers. And so what happens is that there's sort of like this penalty in the long term, and so for some providers, for staying with someone for a very long period of time.
Hmm.
Because usually when you're first shopping around, it's a pretty competitive process. Now it's gotten more complicated where it's harder to sort of figure out what's competitive versus what's not. But what ends up happening is when you're with a provider and they get a renewal notice, well, those renewal notices sometimes, that's not really happening in a competitive environment. You're really looking at a competitor pool of one. And so we see this, or folks say this with their car insurance, or people say this with, their cell phone bills. It's like, well, I know I got this great sort of deal, and then next thing I know, I turn around, I'm paying 3 or 4 times as much as I was
Right.
before.
Yeah. 3 months
So,
later, yes. Yeah.
or a year later, whatever it is. So that's in order to sort of always be in the lower tier from a paying perspective, you really have to constantly be on the lookout for things.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some very powerful rules that were written into the statute to set up the competitive markets, so that the scale is pretty balanced, pretty heavily tilted towards the side of consumers. You just got to know how to
Right.
make it work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we're doing is, we want to make sure that we put you in a fixed price contract, or we recommend that all of our customers have some kind of a fixed price protection, so that they don't have to deal with fluctuations in what's
Right.
happening in the
Mm-hmm.
commodity markets. And a lot of times people get themselves hurt a little bit because they'll either pick a contract that's going to end going, it's over right about now, or it's
Right.
over in July,
Yeah.
and they look like they're great deals at the time because the provider doesn't have to buy the summertime electricity to cover your fixed price.
Right.
So, you fall out of a contract and then you're falling into the periods of the year where you're using more
Mm-hmm.
electricity than you would otherwise.
Right.
So we try to get people in the right renewal cycle, get them out of the summertime if we can avoid it. And you have to keep shopping. You have to keep looking at these things on a going forward basis. And our goal is to make sure that, if you think about all the different tiers in what people pay, we always want to make sure out of all the different tiers that our customers are sort of in that lowest quadrant. They're getting the best, 5-10% of those deals in the marketplace. And that's sort of what we're trying to, we constantly are looking at this stuff. We're constantly rerunning the analytics just to make sure folks are in there. One thing people do get concerned about is, are you changing my provider every month? And the answer to that is no.
Yeah.
So we're putting folks in, sometimes if we're trying to get people in the right cycle, we might put them in like a 3-month plan to get them in the right renewal cycle. But typically folks in this environment are looking at 6 and 12-month rates. And then we're continuing to look and see if something better comes along and look at the economics of that and provide you different options if that's the case.
Yeah.
But
That's super.
definitely from year to year,
Very
we
helpful.
want to make sure you're in the good competitive rates.
Wonderful. Okay, I've heard a little something about a savings calculator. Can you tell me what that
Sure.
is on your website?
Sure. We want to make sure we work a little bit different than a way a lot of folks in the electricity space do. Our goal is to help folks in the long term. So what we try to put out there is it's sort of like a checkup. Some folks may have some kind of a legacy rate, or they did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Prices go up and down, and sometimes it may not make sense for them to look to get out of their existing contract, and at some point they can,
Right.
they may think that because of some of the confusion, some folks might think, well, I'm in a 6-cent rate, and they don't really realize that they may be paying 6 cents for a portion of the energy cost, but there's also some additional
Mm-hmm.
charges. So we put a free savings calculator. It's no obligation whatsoever for you. It's on our website for any customer can come in and just put a couple of pieces of information in where we can try to estimate how you use
Okay.
electricity from one piece of data,
Yeah.
just to give you a sort of a checkup of
Yeah.
where are you, what are you actually paying, and what do we see as competitive
Right.
types of rates? What are some indications of where the market is right now?
Yeah, really just like giving them kind of like a good ballpark, a starting point for y'all to kind of
Right.
figure out where they can go.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And if
well,
it
we
makes sense,
will.
then we can move on. If not, then that's
Yeah.
great. We'll be here when folks decide they want to come
Yeah,
back
sure.
around.
And we'll throw a link for that up here in the comments, and so that people can for sure try out that cost savings calculator. And can you tell us a little bit, like we have someone here asking about your website, we'll put the link for the website up there too, but you can also kind of like verbally talk about it and maybe talk about the process if people want to sign up for this. How do they do that?
Sure. Well, we try to make it simple. So the savings calculator only requires us to get a couple pieces of information from you. We need to know sort of what the address is, so we know which wires company
Mm-hmm.
applies in your particular case.
Okay.
We would recommend that you have a bill, a recent bill, so you can input how many kilowatt hours you used on that bill,
Mm-hmm.
and then what the current charges are on that bill. And so between the volume and the current charges, we can back into what your effective rate is. And we keep track of all of the usage profiles by zip code. So if you have 2,000 kilowatt hours and the average for your zip code for this particular month is, let's say, 1,000, then we know that you use about 100% more than most people in your zip code. And so we would take that profile out in the other months as an estimate as to what you use. And we'll run that through and we'll show you, here's about, what we think, here's what we think you should be doing, and here's what we think we can get you involved with.
Cool.
If it makes sense for you, there's a way at the bottom to sign up, or there's a sign up link on the page. what you're actually doing is you're engaging us to act as your agent so we can
Mm-hmm.
take care of this for you. And we just need to collect that same information, exactly what your service location is, a little bit of information about you that we require in order to process the enrollment with the provider that we
Sure.
select for you,
Yeah.
and try to make it as simple as we possibly can.
Yeah, cool. Um, so once that we would be signed up with y'all, how does, I guess you could say, how does the maintenance of that account work? And then also, what is any cost that is associated with being a member of Energy Ogre?
Sure. So what will happen when you sign up is we're going to ask for a copy of a recent bill. There's a lot of information on that bill, special codes and special things on there that most
Mm-hmm.
people are not really aware of, but
Right.
tell us a lot of information about what's really going on with you and your existing provider. If you're in a contract already, we should be able to see that. Most providers put those contract end dates on those bills. It gives us some other information on there. There's a meter number that we need in order to request your historical usage.
Right.
And so it just gives us some of that additional information. We go through a verification process. So if you're not in a contract, generally speaking, when you have fallen out of contract, you're on a variable rate structure, and those variable rates tend to be higher than what the fixed price rates look like for 6 months or 12 months, whatever have you. So if we find that you're out of contract, we work as quickly as we can to run an analysis behind
Mm-hmm.
the scenes, select a plan, and get you enrolled so that you're not sort of sitting on the sort of variable
Right.
rate marketplace.
Right.
Um, if we find that you're in a plan, if you have a contract, we're not going to move you and have you incur some kind of an early termination
Sure.
fee. We're going to run an analysis that says, here's what we see that the effective rate you're paying with your existing provider. Here's what the marketplace looks like, and here's what that cost savings is. If you leave, we may not have the information from the provider you're with today to know what the termination fee might look like, but we give you enough information for you to be able to say, hey, this is definitely compelling, it's totally worth it to me, or no, it's not big enough. Let me catch back up with you guys in 2 months or 3 months or whatever when my contract is over. And we sort of move on down the road from that point forward.
Okay. And so how would our
Oh, and our, our,
go, go
our
ahead?
service is, sorry, you had asked a question. So we charge $10 a
Yeah.
month, and we just sort of handle it on a going forward basis. So very rarely, sometimes some providers want us to get you on the phone with us just to make sure that we're authorized, even though you
Mm-hmm.
authorize us, et cetera, et cetera. But the goal is to take care of as much as possible. If you have a question about a bill, or you have a problem with your provider, or you're moving, or whatever that is, that's what we're here to do. We're here
Mm-hmm.
to handle those questions
Yay.
for you. So the goal is for you not to wait on hold with one of the providers
You're
for
really
a half an hour or whatever it is. So we're trying to also help cut through some of the frustration in that regard too.
okay. Yeah, no, that sounds like heaven to me. This is great. Um, okay, so then how does your electric bill work after that? Does it still come to me like in my email or in my mailbox? Or does it go through y'all? Do I pay y'all and you take care of it? How does that whole thing work?
Nope. It's just like if you were signing yourself up. So those bills will go to you. You can tell us ahead of time, hey, green products are really important to me, and we'll
Yeah.
try very hard
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that we put you in products that are green. We should come back to that for you and your viewers because there's some important information for you about green products, period. But
Mm-hmm. Well, I
if
mean,
you
we
want
can go
that,
ahead
we'll
and
do
talk
that.
about it. Totally can go ahead and talk about it. Yeah,
Yeah,
for like I had mentioned earlier, for my family having green, clean energy was kind of a big deal for us.
right,
And that was one of the harder things we had sifting through all of the options. Because
right.
like some parts of the day would be used with like cleaner energy and some parts not. So that was really kind of confusing because there were so many, not only just choices and different price points, but then the type of energy they were offering was different.
Right. It's green works a little bit odd, and it has to do with the way electricity actually is produced
Mm-hmm.
and it's delivered. So unlike, if you were to go buy organic vegetables, they're produced organically, they're delivered, and they get put on the shelves for you to select those. So there's a direct movement from the field to your table, and you can track that vegetable all the way through to your house.
Uh-huh.
Electricity sort of does not work that way. You can't paint the megawatts or the kilowatts as they move through the system. What happens is that those renewable sources, they generate electricity. Generally, the renewable resources, we have a little bit of hydroelectric in Texas. It's mostly along the Colorado River.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of hydro, but the vast majority of the electricity that's produced in Texas that's renewable is wind.
Yeah.
We're sort of like the Saudi Arabia of wind producers. So we produce more wind in Texas than any other state in the U.S. So California generates a lot off of solar. We generate a tremendous amount off of wind. And we generate almost as much renewable. I think we might generate as much renewable energy as those guys do. I know we have the nameplate capacity that's almost right on top of what they do as well. So we're a huge player in renewable energy. And so what happens is that every megawatt, which is 1,000 kilowatts, that's produced by these wind resources, it not only do they produce the electricity, but they generate a renewable energy credit. And so that they get those based upon how many megawatts they produce.
Mm-hmm.
And when a retailer sells you power, what happens is they're buying the power however they buy it, but they're also in turn, to support those renewable resources, they buy those renewable energy credits that offset the amount of electricity that you've used. So some people get confused where they think, hey, I'm buying, this green power, and it's only coming, the power that's coming into my home is only coming from all these wind farms in West Texas, and that's not necessarily true, because wind is not a dispatchable resource. So, and oftentimes, like when we're in the hottest point in the day, the wind output is at its lowest point over the course of the day. So we can't really rely on it quite as much. So sometimes what we've seen in the past is, early on in the market, there's a lot of value to the guys that were producing wind electricity to get paid a premium in order for them to build more and more generation. Now what we sort of see is that those renewable energy credits, we generate so much renewable energy here that the price of those renewable energy credits has been very, 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 very low for the last several years. And so what we see, one of the frustrations that I have in placing some of our members into renewable products is, something that might cost the provider, $50, $100 per year to buy those credits, they might be in turn charging customers an extra $200, $300, $400, $500 a year. So we don't like that. We think there's a better way to do it, and we're working on some of those solutions as well. But it's just a little bit of an unfortunate penalty for folks that are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, trying to support the right thing, yes. But that's super helpful info, and I'm glad that y'all have resources too to help people, like us, kind of navigate through what ultimately is the wisest choice for us.
Right.
Okay, so I wanted to ask a couple of questions, just because there were some things kind of floating around in the news. I know there was one electricity provider that kind of left the Texas market, and there's always going to be some sort of fluctuation. How do y'all handle that whenever, like the changes in companies or changes of ownership or things that move, people come in and out of the market? How can y'all help your clients navigate that?
Sure. Well, you're right. We haven't seen folks leave the market very frequently. In this case, Breeze Energy left the market last week. And unfortunately for a lot of the folks, they exclusively sold green products, hence their name, right? So they did a lot in the wind side. So you had folks that had signed up for fixed price power, trying to do the right thing with renewable resources, and then they sort of got left in the marketplace on sort of provider of last resort types of rates, which can be relatively expensive. So we definitely saw that. The good news about all of this is that the whole system and the whole structure that was put in place is relatively orderly. So the good news is that folks that were Breeze Energy customers, they didn't all of a sudden lose their lights because the provider went out of business. They got transitioned to this provider of last resort. So there's a method and a process associated with all this that's actually worked very, very well over the course of the years. In fact, years and years ago, when you had a retailer that might go out of the marketplace, that whole process could take up to 2 weeks.
Right.
What I understand in the Breeze situation is they ultimately defaulted on a Wednesday, and all those customers were moved by Friday.
Oh,
So
wow. That's impressive. Yeah.
it's gotten to a point where, and
Yeah.
then part of it is because they were a relatively small player in
Mm-hmm.
the marketplace with 10,000 customers. But there's an orderly process associated with all this. So we handled that, and we've had a few of our members that were placed with Breeze because they wanted renewable energy, or that was sort of what
Sure.
made the most sense at the time we put them in those programs. And so we've started the process of moving them on to their next providers, get them away from those polar rates,
Mm-hmm.
and just try to find the best thing that's available out there for them in the marketplace. So that's an ongoing process. It's really very similar to the types of processes that happen anyway, switching from one provider to another, or when you're moving into a location or you're moving out of a location. The good news is that Encore is still in the Metroplex. Encore is still the delivery company. They
Right.
own the meters, they own the wires, and so it's like it's an accounting exercise. It's a
Mm-hmm.
bookkeeping exercise of, okay, this customer was at this particular location, was with this provider. As of this time, it's moving on to the next, and now it's the responsibility of the new provider. So it's very seamless, and usually very, very straightforward.
Okay. Great. No, that was really helpful. I certainly learned a lot more about the whole energy industry than I knew before, so thanks.
Well, it's a
Um,
big change because I mostly put people to sleep or bore them to tears. So you actually
no.
sound like you're.
Oh, come on. Moms care about saving money, so you
That's
will
true.
have our attention on that one.
Perfect.
So, just for friends who have joined us kind of late in the game, and to kind of wrap up our Facebook Live, I'm going to take a stab at trying to kind of summarize some of the things that you said here that can be valuable for our readers and viewers.
Right.
So, Energy Ogre is a company here based in Texas, and they can kind of save you the hassle and all the time that it takes to research which energy provider would be best for your family. And they can work with y'all to find the things that are important to you. Based on what is so interesting kind of about technology now, just based on really very individualized use of your own kind of electricity habits and seasons and times of year, and can really work towards getting y'all the best deal, because it is kind of hard to know, like, am I paying too much for this? Is there another company that might be better for me? It takes a lot of work to sort through all that and figure it out. So as he mentioned, they have a great, easy savings calculator on their website. We've put a link for it here in the comments, and that is just a real easy, introductory, no commitment way for y'all to kind of get an idea if company is a good fit for you. And like he said, it's a really minimal fee if you want to sign up, like $10 a month, I think is kind of what you mentioned. And so this is definitely something that we would like to try out with our family for sure. And if y'all have any questions, post them and we can follow up and answer. But Jensen, is there anything else you want to add? How'd I do?
No, that's great. And what I would say is for folks that are watching that aren't really sure what their situation is, it's like everything else. Maybe folks just got their kids back at home.
Right. Yes.
They probably want to go hide away in a corner somewhere and find something else to do for
Yes.
20 minutes. It makes some sense. Pull up a bill.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't really, especially when we put these things on auto pay.
Oh, yeah.
When they do direct
Yeah.
debits,
Right.
you just don't think about
You
it
don't
until
look
it's
at it. Yeah.
right. And so what you should do is take a look at it and give yourself just a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of a checkup going into the summertime. What we want to make sure is that folks are not falling out of contract. It doesn't make sense for you to be on a variable rate going into the summertime.
Right.
mean, it's expensive right now relative to where it's been, but it can get worse. And so we've had a lot of retirements of big power plants, and a good thing, we've had a lot of coal plants that have been retired here in the last year. But and it's pushing up some of the wholesale prices. But it makes sense for folks to get do a little bit of a checkup and spend just a few minutes, 5 minutes, looking at those bills to see what their situation
Mm-hmm.
is, and spot check it with our savings calculator. But that would be the big thing. Is that's the biggest way that I can help sort of give your customers or your members, your viewership advice is to
Yeah.
say, take a quick look at where you are. And I mean, even if we can't help you, you don't want us to help you,
Mm-hmm.
I would say take a look. If you're going to do that, you want to do it by yourself, no problem. Go find yourself a rate program that doesn't have a huge difference between what they're showing you, 500, 1,000, and 2,000. When you see these big rate changes
Right.
between the two, that's a good indication there's probably something a little bit gimmicky about that. If you know
Mm-hmm.
exactly how you use electricity, then you can probably play that pretty well.
Yeah.
But otherwise, look for something that is it's a little bit more consistent across those numbers. That's going to give you the protection. If you end up having 20% more usage because it's super hot this summer,
Yes.
then you're going to be okay. You're
Thank
not going to get a
you.
gargantuan sticker shock.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for all these wonderful tips.
Yeah, definitely.
Again, y'all check out the links that we have posted in the comments, and I hope that y'all have a very cool, well air conditioned rest of your day. See you later.